Hello, brother.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Do you know what we discuss on this podcast?
Yeah, spirituality, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. But what intrigues me and the reason I invited you here is you've inspired a lot of my spiritual development and just having the courage to practice and try things, which is what I witnessed you doing in your life.
Yeah.
In fact, what do you got here? You had a dumbbell here a moment ago.
Kettlebell.
You got a kettlebell. She's sitting right behind me, I can see.
Yeah. That's my little prayer anchor.
Tell me about that. Prayer anchor. I have a mesa. You know mesas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so kettlebell's a little different, though. I don't see that too often.
It's a modern spirituality. So, like, the idea of an anchor is something that keeps me in the present moment, right? I usually have an anchor in my body, which is a little engagement in my pelvic floor, and then I close my asshole, just like a wink. So
just a bit.
Yeah, just like a wink.
Yeah.
So my organs don't sag, and it roots the breath.
Right.
And that keeps me in the present moment. So a kettlebell is cast iron and heavy, and well, it's going to do just that, keep me in the present moment, and then it has an intention with it. It's a reminder for me to be in my prayer, to walk, breathe, and move in a way, make decisions that are going to keep me in alignment.
Yeah. So if you're not in the present moment, where can you be?
Yeah, in my past patterns, in my mind. Recently, frustrations.
In frustrations, in the mind.
Yeah.
So in the present moment, but not present.
Yeah, in the filtration of the past, rather than actually in the present moment where there's pure potential for me to walk forward and create what I want with my life, rather than being in the old cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, the spiritual journey, the spiritual path. That's really what intrigues me a lot. I know what sparked my path.
Yeah.
And everyone's so different. When did you kind of come to that realization that life was spiritual and that you had a path to walk? How old are you now?
I am 31.
31.
I've been asked this question, and there's not like a clear point. Each time I kind of like tune back into it, I have like memories of perceiving things beyond this realm.
Yeah.
And in some ways I'm like, okay, that's like a mystical experience on some level. It's seen as mystical in our culture, which doesn't really tune into realms of energy that are beyond a certain vibratory frequency, right? Mm-hmm. So many children have intimations and visions, maybe seeing things, maybe imaginary friends, could be more than just imaginary, these kinds of things.
Right.
So I could kind of like tap back into that, but in a more developed way where I was making conscious decisions about orientating my life energies towards what is not my personality and a lot of my conditioning, but more so into trying to find my truth and what I authentically love, and wanting to lift up myself beyond who I was. That started towards the teens, but in the 20s. Yeah. Spiritual reading, like Alan Watts was one of my first ones.
Yeah,
which kind of opened.
Me too. Alan Watts. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a very similar interest in spirituality, like the Taoist way, I would say.
The Taoist way changed my life for sure.
And then plant medicines and these, as we kind of talked about earlier, like non-linear and a little bit off the some we call like the traditional spiritual path in many ways. It's not.
Yeah, we were just speaking outside, and you're talking about the ability and the freedom to test multiple things and not be devout at this point anyway. Maybe at some point we both get devout to some specific path and will not stray. Yeah. But I'm still seeming to be in the exploration stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've seen you do all sorts of stuff. So
yeah, that's just been my path. It's like, it seems to me to be one thing leading to a next, but I never know what's next. And I went through phases. Zen was one of my first ones. And that for me felt safe, being raised in a Christian home where God words were very triggering, and the spirituality that
God words were triggering in a Christian home.
Yeah.
Like
because I rejected Christianity in my home and the Jesus, and I didn't see that the ways in which I was raised and the ways they were practicing were coherent with the way I saw the world.
So this is your parents?
This is my parents, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're practicing Christians, and I just felt, at least the way that it was presented at the time, I pushed it away. I later came back into Christianity and saw the spiritual truths.
Yes.
But at the time, I wasn't able to tune into it. So the Zen philosophy, which doesn't have a God, and it's very much about finding our spontaneity, like authentic presence, and just being focused on practice. That was something that I was like, okay, I can meditate. There's nothing else that is attached to this dogmatically.
Yeah.
And that for me at the time was what I needed to make a step forward in the spiritual direction.
Right.
Yeah.
If there's no God in in the Zen, what is this place? Like what do they have an opinion, or whoever is practicing Zen, is there an opinion on what this is, like this architecture that we're just in?
Right.
It's obviously fantastically, insanely complicated and you know, that was, I think, one of my biggest insights is one of my first insights is I like looked around. I was on high dosage mushrooms.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is how that, it was just like, this is impossible.
Yeah.
It can't be possible. It's too advanced.
Right.
That's how I felt. I was like, so it was almost like fear. It's too advanced. I'm too advanced. And
yourself or
everything, all of it. Yeah. Like this body, specifically the body, was how I experienced it, because I looked at my hand.
Yeah.
And I started moving the fingers, and I was like, no, that's impossible. How is it so perfect? Because it's like perfectly communicating.
Yeah.
I was like, how advanced this thing is. And it almost, but that's when I really questioned, like, okay, like this thing is created by something, and it's very, very, very advanced architecture, something.
In your languaging, this thing is created by something that
I don't even know. That was what I first
created
thought.
Puts time in there.
Yes.
Saying that something had to create it at some point in time, which is before now. But in spirituality, we can jump into
there is that's
the ever. It's like eternity, right? So
but I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I was still like, there's some kind of an creation engineering this thing.
Yeah. To jump back into the Zen. So a lot of, and I'm not a Zen master, and I don't know the philosophies in and out, so I'm not speaking on behalf of that necessarily.
Totally. Yeah.
Just want to frame that. But they speak a lot in the negative versus the positive language.
In the Zen.
So an example would be the positive language. God is all loving. God is omnipresent. God is this, and it's really big and great. The negative language is God is not the mind. God is not the body. God is not this, not that.
Right.
Because it's beyond all thought and word, right? So there's just two ways of pointing at the same thing, going in different directions.
And there's totally different experience the way with those approaches.
Yeah. Absolute light versus absolute emptiness.
Yeah, and I've experienced both of those.
Right.
And actually, in the more recent time, in the last 12 months, I've been experiencing the emptiness at levels that have been like profound and beautiful and calming. Like because the emptiness to me has represented lately, it's just like absolutely there's no boundaries. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as boundaries. It's just fucking empty in every direction forever. So all the potentiality feels available, and that's the feeling. Even just in the body, like I was at breath training, which I'm going to ask you about in a sec, about breath work. But just breathing into my body, it's just been feeling like there's just nothing inside of it, almost like a clear channel of just. It's like the breath's the only thing there. It feels like sometimes.
Yeah. So these states of experiencing this? Is this just in your practices or just like in your everyday life?
No, when I was in practices, yeah.
Okay. And this is through the breath work.
These particular ones I'm talking to you about right now, yeah. And there's peacefulness and beauty in that emptiness. I've been resonating with it. Whereas I think in the past a lot, I've kind of identified with light. Yeah. As if it's better almost.
Yeah.
But
that's a big movement in the spiritual world.
Right? Exactly. Is that light is somehow that's the path, and but it's not in the Tao. It's just not like, it's just they're both have, it's both.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the phrases there, I believe it's also a Zen phrase, is Samsara is nirvana. It's like cycles and the thing that we actually want, they're the same thing. And like I've always been, is one of the reasons I was initially attracted to Zen, the idea of the Zen sage versus a God man in another different type of religion. One is like a transcendental teacher, and those are amazing. Those are really great.
Transcendental teachers are.
Yeah, like a yogi, a supreme, sleeps 2 hours a day and just compounds love all of his life. And then the Zen sage is someone who's realized his true nature, and he's like, I know what I am, and then just wanders and just goes and plays in the forest. He meditates. Maybe he becomes a fisherman. And I was like, that is so like, there's something really beautiful
I know
in
what
that.
I am.
What's that?
I love that. I know
what I am. And then they just have a completely ordinary life.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it is. You can find the Tao. You can find the true nature of reality in yourself, in all things. And we don't need to transcend our current state. And that, to me, is such an important thing to bring through in spirituality. Yeah. So we don't get too much into ascension and transcending this moment, which means often to get away from what's happening right now, and rather just
trying to get somewhere.
Exactly.
Right. This has been the curse of. No, you know what? It's not a curse because it's a blessing, but that's probably the biggest thing that I've had to move out of.
Yeah.
Having come from a business background, which is entirely based on goal orientation and trying to get somewhere, trying to be someone. So much of the practices is like, I am someone and I'm this and I'm here now fully.
So I know that you embody that in your life, this level of spirituality where you're not avoiding these emotions and the harder parts. And I know that one of your passions is to bring this into business, and you've evolved your business from that more goal-orientated way of living. How then do you integrate this level of like being here now? And
are you asking me how I do it?
And not so much in the goal orientation. How do you bring that through in your business?
This is how. So what we're doing right now, this essentially, I would call this a market. I'm marketing right now. It's a marketing channel.
Sure.
But the point, and yes, if you keep doing this, you will amount to a certain number of podcasts and episodes and all that stuff. But the real point of the podcast is so that feelings that can express through me, and I can speak to incredible humans like you. And the point of the podcast is the moment that we're sharing right now. This is the present moment experience that I'm having. Yeah. That this is my business right now. Ultimately, if I want to look at it that way, I could look at it that way. Yeah. Or is it a passion project, or is it, we could label it a bunch of different ways, but this is the experience I want to have in my life right now. And here we are. And I think that changes everything, right? When everything about your business is not about trying to get out of it, but trying to be fully in it for better and for worse. Yeah. Right? And you've navigated so many things, and we know that all the emotions that come through these vessels have their own beautiful teachings, and there's something beautiful in all of it. Like, so, even now when I feel fear or when I feel sadness, I just feel it fully, and it will pass as it goes in the impermanence of reality. Yeah. No need to worry about things lingering. It's impossible. According to the Tao, everything moves, everything changes. So you can just feel things fully and completely, right? Or be here now with this, right? In 5 years, the podcast will be different if I'm still doing it, or it might not even be a thing anymore. Yeah. So like, this is the moment, really. And I think that's how I embody it in business now. And what I teach people is like, make sure the creation is the point of the creation. Whatever you're building is, you're doing it for the process, 100% for the process, and not at all for the outcome. 0% for the outcome. The outcome just occurs.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this will go, but here we are.
Well, it sounds like you've reached the point of beautifully weaving your spiritual path and many, as what you're talking to, spiritual virtues or spiritual knowledge, like not wanting to offer what we do for a reward because you're doing it authentically. And when you can integrate into your way, it's like there's no difference between these two worlds. What was business, what was the spiritual path have then merged.
Yes.
And then that's the harmony, that's the unity that is spoken of in the Tao, and that's what we're going to find our authentic place and path and really offer ourselves in a good way to the world. So,
and that's what I've watched you do too. Like the first business I've seen you do is you, and what I'm going to ask you about now is your breath journey, your breath path. That seems to have been an anchor in your journey, and you've evolved into deeper layers of that, and to Qigong, and you know, I haven't seen you in a little bit, but like a lot of things. But breath, when I observe from my point of view, has been a pillar in your path.
Sure.
What is going on with breath?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Why is, like, I mean, I can share what I think's going on, but like, why is that path expanding right now? Especially, is it just a good societal is it a good trending thing right now? Or is it like, that's one of the tools that'll be the most profound for this time for people? It's accessible. That's what I see.
That's just it.
It's accessible.
It is the one thing that we really all share, and it does transcend all language, because once you get the technique or whatever you're practicing together and you're just breathing as a group, then that's it. You transcend all the things, and it doesn't even matter what you're doing while you're breathing. You could be dancing, you could be making love, you could be doing breath work, but so long as you're breathing, we go beyond mind. And when we go beyond mind, we go back beyond all of those layers we're talking about, the conditioning, and we're right in the present moment.
But we have to bring conscious awareness to it. That's the difference.
Conscious breathing.
Yes.
But we don't have to consciously just witnessing the breath keeps us in the present moment. I'm writing a book called The Heart and Breath of Tantra.
Yeah.
And it's HERART, because it's heart, which is love, and then art, which is beauty, and then breath, which is present moment experience. Those are the three keys to Tantra. And when we integrate those into our everyday life, then we radically transform out of the old conditioning. But breath work is what really helped me in one of the most sustainable ways throughout my spiritual journey, because I was born with my cord wrapped around my neck, and I had a dysfunctional breathing pattern till my 20s. And that dysfunctional breathing pattern represented my dysregulated nervous system, depression, anxiety, all the things that I was carrying from my early childhood that I wasn't able to process.
Yeah.
I had birthing trauma, and then just so much emotion that I didn't know how to feel and move through them. I had a breathwork session in my 20s where I had a full rebirthing. I relived the experience of having that cord wrapped around my neck, and I released.
When you did that, how was it? How engaged was it? Was it visual, emotional, mental? Like what was the
fully embodied? I curled up in a little ball. Like, this wasn't like me acting. It was like my body was doing something, and I let it go. It. And the facilitators were amazing at the time. They brought pillows, and they really birthed me through a canal, like experientially. And I was covered in sweat. I was like cawing or cooing like a child. I could never recreate those sounds.
How did they know that that's what you were going through, though? Or
they're well trained.
Wow.
If you're trained in breathwork, you can. This was a holotropic technique.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's part of the modules of learning. The rebirthing experience is spoken about a lot. Dr. Stanislav Grof is one of the ones who wrote about it. And he writes a lot about the birthing stages because it commonly comes up. And yeah, I experienced such an opening from that moment. It was as if I hadn't been feeling my whole life, and I was like, these are emotions. And then I had
so you
something
just all
to work
of a sudden
with.
Connected to motion levels that you had never experienced before.
Yeah. And then from there, because most of my life I had been searching for things to help me heal, I'd gotten a little bit into meditation, plant medicines, etc. I was like, I found a tool that worked. And then I did like 10,000 hours of breath within like a year or two. And then I found yoga and I found all these other pieces in and around the same time. And I just went and basically lived as a crazy yogi, often doing 10 hours of practice a day for several years, went celibate. And I was like, I can heal. I can do this.
Yeah.
And that just like charged me up. And that just completely reorientated my entire life energies.
In a nutshell.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the power of breath.
That's the power of breath. Beware.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I did not know the story.
Yeah.
No, you've never shared that. That's
And then
incredible.
And then like now I'm in the world of Qigong, which goes really deep into like I'm doing channeling and mediumship and things that were completely on my realm of knowing, understanding, or even beyond my bullshit meter.
What is channeling?
Channeling is allowing other energies to communicate with us. So think of our body as a receiver of energy, and we're always receiving energy from different sources. Most people are just attuned to their own energy, and that's what they're sharing. Yeah. But if we open our mind and go sit out in nature, your thought patterns are going to change. Totally. You're channeling some kind of different thoughts coming through, and we can actually channel many things coming through. We can channel singers. We can channel our favorite artists.
I'll share. I'll share something. But I had the first channeling experience I've ever had this year at Base Coast. Yeah. And the best way that I was trying to figure out what it was, and my friend Vern, he knew what was going on. Yeah. But we were dancing. I was on acid. Uh-huh. And it was really high, like it was full bass music. Mm-hmm. And the best way I can describe it is that it felt like there was no one home. Like I wasn't there. Yeah. And which means there's no one there to interfere. Yeah. So this sound, this is like the main stage at Base Coast, and the sound is full bass music. Yeah. And the way Vern explained it to me, he's like, bass is really good for this, but it felt like waves moving through my body. Mm-hmm. And it was very centralized, just coming through me and moving like a central wave. And I just wasn't interfering with the process. Yeah. So this thing is communicating through my body, and I'm just letting it do it. It's just not interfering with any of the process. And my body moved in ways that I've never moved before. Mm-hmm. And I'm not kidding. Literally, I was like, my body is just moving in ways that I didn't even know it could move. And the next day I was so sore because you're just not interfering with it. It's just these sound waves were moving through my chest, and I was doing all these weird, amazing movements, which now I've started to practice, but it freed up my body. My shoulders were looser. Yeah. And so this case, I'm channeling the vibration. It's just coming through. Yeah. And the organism the body just knows how to, because it just knows how. If you allow it, the signal to move through it, it just will go through. Yeah. But we have the capacity to block things. That's what we can do in our lives. So I could just interfere and block the whole thing. Yeah. But that's not what happened.
Yeah. We have the capacity to tap into energy, and everything is energy. It's information. And we have the capacity to tap into the DNA codes, which are our light-filled core, and at a level of light and breath and subtle body energy, we can tap into higher beings, rocks, trees, all these kind of things have energy and information. Yes. And we can interpret that through our own consciousness and allow things to speak through us. So my training in channeling as well as mediumship allows for us to break beyond the ordinary confines of mind and the beliefs that I had about what the limitations of my personal mind and body and what I could do. When those begin to fall away, and most people experience this first on a psychedelic state, the practice of Qigong is to learn to do all of those things that we may experience without the psychedelics through your breath, and by modulating your receiver, this body, through how you move energy through the system, And this beautiful system you talked about is being so fucking complex. We have no idea how much more complex it is. But
honestly, it felt like my body was already programmed with all that information. Like, it knew already.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It already knew.
Yeah.
So this is just a first time where it felt like a TV set.
Yeah.
And it has access to millions of channels.
Yeah.
And this was the first time it turned that channel on, but the programming has been completed long before
Totally.
You know, like those movies where a spaceship comes out of the ground on Earth, and they're like, how long has that been down there? It's like,
yeah,
it's a feeling of that. It's just like, oh, my body knew this.
My very first time channeling was on mushrooms when I was like early 20s.
Yeah.
And then I had a hot bath, and it was wonderful. And then I was like, I'm gonna fill this up with cold, and then started filling it up with cold.
The hot bath.
After the hot bath.
Oh, okay.
And then I was like cold water after that. And then as soon as the cold water hit my spine, it just had a big jolt of energy from my low spine all the way to the back of my head. My head cocked back, and I just started speaking in tongues. And then I just like stepped aside, and this energy, this
like you stepped out to work
my consciousness, just to witness whatever was happening. It lasted about 3 hours.
That's a long time.
A long time. And then I was just like witnessing it, and I was like speaking like, I don't know, Mandarin or these other languages, but you know how like when we learn a certain language, you can't pronounce certain intones and other things.
Yeah.
These were all just like coming through me, and I was like, what is happening? And then after that, it like cleared my whole channel out. I started receiving all these ideas and information.
Yeah.
And then later, as I began to do this more, I realized there's a process of me breaking all the regular moving and breathing patterns I have as my ordinary human. And this allows me to step out of my own way to receive different energies. So I go through a process of just dancing and making noise and singing.
Yeah, I've seen you in process.
Yeah. Many people have seen that. And then all of a sudden, it's just like clarity, new consciousness is available, new ideas, new insights. And from there, creativity comes, and my writing flourishes, and this comes out. It's like this process of getting out of the way. There's obviously a process of like, you know, mediumship is like connecting with your ancestors who have passed.
Yeah.
But there's so many different things that we can do with our consciousness.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah, and I some of the things that I've been doing that were inspired, I think by you at some level too, which is why I resonate with you, is just like, yeah, honestly, just a lot of just like hitting myself. And one of the things I'll do, especially when I'm dancing, is that I'll cross the eyes. Yeah. So it's like there's no one there.
Right.
And it feels like there's nothing there, and I just kind of wave into like these weird ass experiences. Uh-huh. But I feel more free through it.
Totally.
Because you're not, the personality has all these restraints, but if you fuck up the personality, then it's like, yeah, there's more freedom to experiment.
Yeah.
Right? It's when you're trying to fit into some persona, or when I'm trying to fit into some persona where I feel I get bounded up by trying to like, this is my character, and like that he wouldn't do that.
Exactly. But
sometimes where I've seen you, it's like I almost didn't recognize you because you're not. I remember looking at you at the one of our dance events, and we just stared at each other, and it felt like there's no one there. Like, who's there? Who's even there? Yeah. And it doesn't need to be anyone there.
No.
But I just felt connected to you, and I'm like, I love this guy. I love whatever this is.
Yeah, we've had some great dances.
We fucking have, yeah. And
it's like, it's not our personalities dancing on the floor together. It's like a deeper part of ourselves. And it's just like more like an authentic energy exchange, like wind blowing through trees. It's
a good way to look at it. It's an energy exchange.
Yeah. And there's so much less of it's just communication on a different level. And when you're able to connect with someone at that level, you can get past like the barriers that we usually have set up in ourselves, psychic barriers, or just like the capacity for us to connect through conversation has many limitations.
Honestly, I was gonna say, I think I've very rarely connected with you like this. Actually, we don't usually connect this way.
Yeah.
So when you message, you're like, I'm like, come over for a chat. And I'm like, it's a medium okay way to connect.
Yeah. So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You were recently at a breathwork training, correct?
I was.
Yeah.
You know exactly which one.
Do you want to share a little bit about the experience?
Yeah, sure. It was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
To starters, was with Robin Clements, and he's amazing. He was a really, really beautiful. Just the whole experience was very well curated. Property was beautiful. Food was unbelievable. And
Is Tanner?
Tanner.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner. And he's a babe.
He's
Tanner's a babe. And the experience was just exactly what I needed. And I'd been wanting to do it for over a year. Yeah. Just like wanting to make time to go deeper into breath. Especially because I facilitate with like plant medicines and stuff. And it's really the home base is breath. It's like the safe haven of everything.
Yeah.
So just learning more about the actual mechanics of it and learning the technique that Robin had been sharing. And I knew that he trained you. Mm-hmm. And you guys speak so highly of him. So that's really why I went. And the other thing that attracted me to him was just I had the intuitive feel that he brings kind of a lot of ceremony to the experience. He's very ceremonial.
Yeah.
And that was my intuition. And he was. It was beautiful.
Yeah. He's such a powerful teacher, and I appreciate the point you raised about when you facilitate plant medicine, it's really important to have the breath, because these are both the realms that I work in as well. And for an individual to work with plant medicines, one of the things that I would want them to know is how to surrender. And the breath wave technique in particular is all about surrendering. It's all about learning to exhale with ease and move into that.
Actually, maybe you could explain the technique, because
sure.
I heard obviously Robin explains the technique, but you're one of his students that's quite far along the path. And what is the technique in your eyes, I guess, in your experience?
Yeah. So the umbrella term is conscious connected breathwork, and there's a number of different schools that, depending on how they breathe, have branched off. And there's many beautiful ways of breathing, from holotropic, which doesn't necessarily teach relaxation on the exhales. Like when I did holotropic, at least, it was very much like, which produces a whole different kind of physiology and chemistry.
Right.
Completely different states.
Yeah.
The breath wave technique it's a gentle wave of breathing where we connect our inhale to our exhale without pause. So it forms a nice circle throughout the body. And then we're inhaling using the full expansion of our diaphragms, pelvic, thoracic, throat.
So you're opening down here, and then it all flows through it in.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. The prompt that I really like for the inhales is you open to receive the breath. So instead of like forcing and trying to take breath, we're learning to receive the breath, which is completely different in the practice of it.
It sounds different even just saying it that way.
Yeah, you're allowing the breath to come in rather than trying to take, because breathing is our most fundamental relationship. And when we change that, we change everything. So we have this active inhale where we receive the breath and open to it in our whole body. And the exhalation, we simply relax, we let go.
Just let it go.
And we receive the sensation of where the breath went. And this is how the breath is the greatest doctor and teacher, because as we're opening, we'll immediately become aware of where we're unable to fully open and to expand. And this is due to the holdings that are stored in our nervous system, due to unprocessed emotion and the limiting beliefs and stories that are all attached in those bundles that prevent us from feeling.
The breath doesn't go to those spots.
Exactly.
Because there's too much stuff stored, it'll activate it.
There's armoring in there.
And we don't want, and it's a protection mechanism? Because you have to deal with it then?
The body in its infinite wisdom, at a certain time when that happened, when that memory was laid down, didn't feel safe enough to experience those emotions, so it just stored it. It stored it for another time, till you're ready. And this practice is for individuals who are ready to feel, and they're ready to heal those parts of themselves that are stored in the body, so that they can move on from those old stories and emotions and move forward in their evolutionary and spiritual journey.
I love how you're saying that. Like, it stores it until you're ready.
Exactly.
It's almost nice of it.
It is. Yeah.
But there's side effects until you come back.
Exactly.
And that becomes the things that show up in how you live your life.
Yeah. So the breath in each and every moment is a representation of how we're thinking and feeling. And by changing our breathing, we're going to completely change our life. And by learning to work with the breath, we're going to learn to become more aware of who we are on those deeper levels and all the conditioning and the traumas that's influencing our current behaviors, because we can't make optimal dream affirmative decisions that move us forward unless we're free from the limitations and all the stories that have been held in us, that are held in us, until we find that clarity and we can release those. So the breath is the perfect teacher, because it'll always, no matter what's happening, give you the session that you need to move you forward on your spiritual journey. Not too fast, not too slow, just what you need.
Just what you need.
Because you're always right where you need to be, and you always just need to tune back into this moment, and the breath is the anchor. Kettlebells work good too, but the breath is the anchor.
We'll put a link for the kettle bar.
Not sponsored yet.
Yeah, that's a really excellent way to put it.
I am sponsored by the breath from Great Spirit.
Yeah. Sponsorship's free.
Yeah.
Wow, very well articulated.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What do people do? Like what are the patterns that you say, like, that people have with their breathing? What are the most common ones you see that are like with when you, because you do breathwork facilitation 101?
Mm-hmm. So I'll offer 2 examples. One is patterns of overachieving. So
trying too hard.
So yang and yin in a life, where it's just sympathetic, parasympathetic. People are type A achievers, often inhale, and they have a nice, beautiful, full inhale. And when they begin to breathe in this way, the pattern that shows up is wanting to take a big inhale, like forcibly gasp it in with control, and then not having the capacity to relax their body, release on the exhalation. And this pattern is a representation of how they're living. They're constantly going, taking action, yang, and they don't have that capacity necessarily to actually relax. So it's fine to be yang and move out in that developed way. You need to have
the equal capacity to go back the other way.
Yeah, you want to be able to relax at the end of the day, right? Yeah. So for these individuals, their nervous system is constantly tilted towards sympathetic activation, which is using energy, which is stressful when prolonged. And they're not having the capacity to regulate, find rest. And the parasympathetic state is when we get the wide view of the big picture. So those individuals will often experience much more of a narrow way of seeing the world. And this is also most commonly represented in the throat being very closed off. The particular holding pattern in the throat prevents the wisdom and intelligence of the thinking mind in the brain from connecting with the intelligence of the feeling mind in the heart and the instinctual wisdom in the gut, different parts of our nervous system. So their decision making is not optimal because there's so much in their brain, because there's a disconnection in their capacity to feel their whole body. So when we open up and relax our whole system and feel our whole body, we can tune into our instincts, our feeling, and our thinking, and align them, and we'll make optimal decisions. So that's one. And then the second one is, at a deeper level, this is what I train for in Qigong, you can get a sense for the different organs and if people can actually bring energy through them. Because our organs on a subtle level can have blocked, in Chinese medicine, qi, blocked energy at 3 different levels: physical, emotional, and mental, or stored beliefs. So if you're sensitive and I'm doing breathwork with an individual, I can sense if there's blockages in their organs and their capacity to breathe or bring energy through their organ systems.
Interesting.
Because like anything in the body, it's a system with energy going in and out of it. So that's another level. So common one is like your kidneys blocked off when you're feeling fear, and the tightening of the back muscles. And there's a relationship there between a large stressor in your life often and your capacity to be at ease.
I remember reading, well, not reading, but in training with Taoism, like the kidneys is where a lot of our love center is stored.
A lot of what?
Just love, our capacity for love. So weak kidneys is associated with that. How do you, when you think of kidneys, what does that mean for you?
In the training I received, it's Homer the Jur, which is the will.
The will.
The will. And we have what's called our prenatal energy. So this is the energy, the chi that came in before our life that we inherit. And then we get postnatal chi, which is from our food and our breathing. So it's like a storehouse and a battery. And people who basically are overachievers and they overrun themselves, like working all through winter when our body wants to relax, begin to take from this prenatal chi, which is supposed to be a storehouse, and they burn their battery out. And by the time they hit like 50, they run out, and then they run into health complications.
Oof.
So the kidneys.
So it's winter is when you're supposed to relax.
When you're supposed to relax, yes, Squamish and Whistler. Slow
Everyone's
down.
going and getting
yeah,
it.
go
It's so
24/7. Yeah. So that's being in harmony with the cycles, the Taoist concept.
Well, many don't follow the cycles.
No, not in our world. And even myself, it is quite difficult to live in this society and try to keep up with all the things and also try to live in harmony because our Western society is very young. And in that way...
Why did we do this? Yeah, it's very young.
That's why the breath is such good medicine here in this particular technique, because I'm trained in multiple breath techniques. But this is the one that I offer 95% of the time because most individuals...
Because it's letting go. Right?
Need to balance the yang and letting go. Exactly.
Yeah, when we talked about plant medicine, we were talking about that, plant medicines and just the letting go process is like, I can't, and I know you've done in tremendously high doses with various plant medicines, and I have done high doses as well, not as high as you've done, but there's no possible way to do those doses if you can't let go. No. If you, in fact, I would say that trying to control it in any way is where all the terror happens. Yeah. Because it's when you make that effort and you try and make it anyway, it's almost like the realization that you're not in control, and that could be the terror. So it really is so beautiful to be able to actually have the practice where you can really let go and be the witness to whatever the hell arises. Yeah. And sometimes it is the most difficult thing will be the one that will come out. Absolutely. Right. I've had intentions where I want teach me about life, and then I like the whole thing's about death. And it's only the next day where I'm just like, oh, you want to learn about life? Study death. Right. And you want to learn about one polarity? Study the other polarity. The dualistic Taoist way, right? It's just totally. But if if I'm like I want to learn about love. And then it's not that, and I'm resisting that, and I can't surrender into the way the teaching wants to arise. Yeah. I'm going to have a big problem. Exactly. Well, it'll be a challenging experience, more than it needs to be. Uh-huh.
And that's why these plant medicines teach us to actually deal with life as it is, because we don't know.
We don't know.
And it is a surrendering process. Like, that's why I also love Vipassana meditation or natural meditation, where it's just, there's no control at all of the breath. And it's easy to market and sell a lot of the other breath. It's like, this will pump you up for your sports. Yeah. But what outcome. Exactly. Yeah. A goal, and then what we can, really show. But surrender, you will surrender, and your capacity to surrender at the most important moments of your life. Divorces, deaths, real tragedies. That's surrender. When, if you gracefully surrender, you will move through that experience with ease, and that it will be the most important thing that you learn.
So a lot of our world, so we're not well trained as a society in the Western world to surrender. Is that a lot of the difficulty then? Is people just can't? You want to control it, you're not in control ultimately, right? And then you haven't been trained in surrender. So that easeful ability to move through the life, the being alive situation is just difficult. And now we have stress all over the planet, or not all over, but like stressors and like
Yeah.
All the things happening, the depressions and all of the things that are going on and seemingly increasing. I'm not sure if they are, but statistics say that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
Well, I would say most people are living in a series of control patterns from their ego, which are the result of early childhood experiences where they had difficult emotions. Instead of experiencing them, they developed a series of distractions or things that they did in their life that prevented them from feeling, and they built an entire life, and we built an entire civilization pretty well around control patterns that keep our ego distracted enough not to feel the deeper pieces of ourselves. So we don't actually live in harmony with the way of the universe and the principles of abundance and how we can manifest based on giving and receiving, because most people can't manifest unless they learn how to both ask and how to receive that.
Right.
That whole
Ask
receiving
and
piece
receive
is blocked up.
Ask, and then you got to let it in.
So instead of that we've developed a work mentality and a grind mentality instead of a work or a grind and flow.
And then it's also like work, get it, and then hold on to it.
Exactly.
Right? Don't lose it.
And it's much more tilted to the dopaminergic norepinephrine circuits of the brain, which are reward-related cycles and motivation, rather than the serotonergic, which are more associated with being here and now and appreciating this moment. And then going back to Taoism, we strive to be in balance. We can have all the dopamine reward-related circuits and all those amazing things, but we want inner stillness and a capacity to be here and now.
Yeah.
And when we integrate those, we get the best of both worlds. And this is all something we can modulate by changing our breathing patterns, which are the subconscious patterns that are repeating over and over and over again.
Repeating patterns.
And just another shout out to the kettlebell.
Yeah.
Repetitive movement creates serotonin. So when it's like self-soothing behaviors that children do. If you swing a kettlebell over and over, you're not wanting to get anywhere. You probably get some dopamine too, but you're also producing serotonin, which is giving you a sense of like calm. So it's a tool to regulate your nervous system. And many of Qigong, for those of you who don't know Qigong, it's often repetitive movements. So not like yoga where you're often in one position. You're moving your arms, say 10 times in a circle. Same thing. You're producing serotonin, which is deepening your capacity to be present and just content in this moment here and now.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Two things that are questions I want to ask that are arising.
Sure.
One, because it's been a big theme in my life, what is the ego? That's another word that's thrown around all the time.
Right.
What is it? How would you summarize what it is?
In this moment, like the initial thing that comes to my mind is a psychological construct. But I would have to ask you, like, depends on what you mean by the ego, but then I just kind of ask you your question.
Yeah, what is it? I guess for you, what is it now? Like, that's useful for you. The framework that you would use to understand it, you just said it's a mental construct.
Yeah.
Okay, for what is a mental construct then? Like, if you were to break that down a little bit more elaborate.
Like a constellation of beliefs, ideas, and feelings which are organized around a central identity of self.
Like a small self.
A small self, like a limited self, as opposed to the great self, which is the most expansive version of what we could term self.
Yes. Okay, cool. I couldn't have said it better. That's exact. I would have called it, the way I call it is it's an identification system.
Right.
And it's an ability to identify in a world so that you can make sense of and seem like you know in a place where you don't.
Right.
So like I know you're Zack and this is the wood and this is a microphone. Yeah. And I use all of that as my framework for identification so my ego can have a sense of it knows what this is.
Yeah. I like that.
And that's a small self. So like, it for me, I've always thought of it that way.
That's really beautiful.
Not always, but like, when you say that's a piece of wood, that's an ego statement.
Right.
Because it's just, I just threw a label over top of something that's undescribable.
Huh.
And then so that's how I see it. And then like you said, there's big self.
Yeah.
There's self.
This, I really appreciate the way you said that because we're talking a little bit about like ascension and transcending.
Yes.
And the big thing in many circles is to transcend the ego or to befriend the ego. And the way that you presented it is just like, this is what it is at a certain level. And it's like not good or bad, just what it is.
It's what it is.
And then there are other levels.
Then there's other levels.
It's just like as simple as that. Nothing needs to be killed.
Nothing needs to be killed. It's just an identification system.
Yeah.
But and then if you move away from identification, the barriers evaporate.
Yeah. Okay, I got a question for you.
Shoot.
Can you share some of your spiritual practices?
Well, one that you'll know right away is dancing. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorites. Because I think actually ecstatic dance specifically is when I really realized it, because it's so beyond the mind. Right? When I started to realize to dance without mind, it like freed me into like this weird embodiment. So that's one of my favorites, is actually just dancing. From a more like actually working through real life things, I use a lot of a process called polarity integration, but it's really identifying like just in general awareness, when I feel something that has a pull on me, but either a negative or a positive charge, the desire. It starts off that I want to be peaceful. That's something that I realized like many years ago now, but peacefulness was something that I wanted in life. And I don't think I used to really want that, but just being harmonious and peaceful is a big basis of Taoism, is to be in harmony, peaceful, and in balance, to be a balanced person. So if working through overcharge on the negative or the positive, once I identify something, which is easy to identify, it just shows up in your life. You like get really excited by something, or you get really judgmental against something. I've identified a charge. So if I ever feel judgment's an easy one, but if I ever notice judgment arising in the mind, I would just observe it, and I would identify whatever that judgment is, and then I'd immediately try and identify the opposite of that feeling or that judgment. And then through that, I get a polarity, and I can start to work through what I feel about these two different polarities till they neutralize through feeling them, taking the time to feel it within myself. And then I'll actually attempt to feel them together, like at the same time. Right. And as I practice that, they unify. And through that unification, the charge gets released, and then you're at peace with it. So these polarity integrations, I've done hundreds of them now. Yeah. And when I started, it was with the big charge words. So one of them would be like, in business for entrepreneurs, I use winning and losing. Yeah. Right. I want to win. Now you have a very big positive charge on winning, and losing is negative. It's yin. That's the yin and the yang. Yeah. Right. I don't want to prioritize this is better than winning's better than losing. Failure's is bad. So rather than get caught up in the stories associated with all these things, I'd actually I sit down and I'd be like, tell me something. Ask myself, right? What is winning? Tell me something about winning. Winning is good. Tell me something about losing. Losing is bad. Tell me something about winning. Winning is, whatever I feel about it. And I'll just keep going back, and it starts to go through the whole, it unbundles all the things that you think and feel and visualize about these concepts or these terms, and until they really don't make much sense anymore. Yeah. And then as I do that more and more, then I can bring them together. Because we all know, like even winning and losing, that one particular polarity, like failure is just what is failure, right? Like how do you know if you're failing? Like it's all such a mind game. Yeah. So that's a practice that I did early, and that helped me really de-bundle the conceptual world. And as that got mysticized, the whole conceptual world became less charged and less important. That has allowed me to move more into like feeling life instead of thinking about life. And that's a big practice, is I want to feel life. Yeah. And I didn't always want that.
Yeah. When did that come about, when you were ready to feel life?
When I start working with plant medicines, it's all feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, life is like a feeling. Yeah. And it just, it's a big transition.
Yeah.
Right? Business and all that stuff is so conceptual. It's all about trying to get somewhere, win somewhere.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose. You want to be someone. You don't want to be no one.
Yeah. It's one of the pieces that I'm always looking for ways to help guide people towards, is that what many people think they seek is more, or to move forward, these goals, etc. What many people actually want is just to be centered here and now, and realize that we have everything we need, in that state of contentment over joy or happiness, or just like chasing happiness over contentment.
Contentment seems to be highly undervalued.
Yeah.
Why? It's just a social thing again?
It's cultural, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful process I do a lot in Qigong, where we go over, we have our 5 yin organs, and they're each associated with a yin and a yang emotion. And we do that same process. We tap into, say, liver. We have anger, frustration on the yin.
Yeah.
There's a specific sound we make to move the energy, to release that quality, and we tap into it. And then we go and we invite in the yang emotion, which is kindness and compassion. And then we move through our bodies, or connected with our body, connected with our emotions. And then we also tap into the beliefs stored in and around those. And then we go through all the basic emotions of frustration, sadness, overexcitement, worry, and fear. And then just like to clear all those, you feel so good by the end of it, because you've witnessed what's active in your life.
Right. What's
keeping you from just being centered and content. And when that's all cleared, when you make really beautiful decisions, you bring harmony to your body, your mind, everything. It's so simple.
Do you think people even want that though? Like, do people know they want to be content?
Most of them haven't experienced, I would say, true contentment, or like a deep level of contentment to know, yes. And even though, because I offer people breathwork, and in a single experience, I can bring them into a state of complete surrender, contentment, and ease.
Yeah.
To the likes of they may have never experienced in their life. That's what a lot of people say. But for them to also devote their life towards that path of staying there, contentedness, doesn't always happen, because we have a lot of karma and a lot of things working against us, in that when we go back out of contentment, the mind comes back in, and all the patterns of our life and the life that we built isn't always conducive. And it's just patterning. It's like we've learned for so long to resource and to seek things outside of ourselves, that this notion of coming back into contentment and just breathing is all we need. We have to spend a lot of practice, right? To get the conditioning gone, and to reorientate our life energies in, instead of always seeking out.
Yeah.
And it's truly, it does take practice and does take work. That's why it's called breath work. It's not always easy, but yet it is also the easiest thing, because once you get in flow with it, the whole universe supports that process, because you're not just learning to be content with yourself, in harmony with yourself. Because when you find that harmony within yourself, your entire life reorganizes into harmony.
Yeah. Yeah, and only the people and everything, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're just doing it on your own, say you're a dad and your rest of your family's not doing it, your work's not doing it, yeah, it's difficult. But if you have a community of people surrounding and supporting you, it's as easy as breathing in and out, because that's all we need. And that's what this breathwork movement, Qigong, yoga, these communities developing and taking more and more effect in our culture is helping us to rebalance. And it cycles. Back in China, we had Confucianism and Taoism. And Confucianism is very linear. It's very much as kind of like a parallel to where we are now.
Yeah.
And this Taoism way was a balancing force that came in, and it's been like, let's introduce play and let's introduce all these other ways, which just help to balance us, because naturally as individuals we will go towards one end or the other. Sometimes I work out really hard and I have to recover extra extra long.
Yeah.
That's just part of life.
Yeah.
It's just knowing how to find our balance in the middle so we don't get too off our center, which can really keep us sane. And I like to explore the edges. Like,
I know.
It's just like, can I not get lost out there? Which is so
Or get lost.
It's like, I do want to come back eventually.
Yeah. On like a bigger scale, what's happening on our planet right now? Like when you tune into like the planetary shifts happening, because it's very chaotic, seemingly for many people.
Yeah.
Maybe you're centered and striving to be centered.
What's happened? That's a big question.
It's a big question.
That's a big question.
Do you think the chaos is so that to force people? Like for me, I sometimes feel it's like it's getting chaotic, so that people, because then it signals to find your center.
Totally.
Right? It's like it's so chaotic that you just like, I gotta find center.
Yeah.
And I can't source from out there anymore because that's the chaos.
Yeah.
So it's like push you inward. I know it's totally, I don't have the answer to this by any means, but it's like I sometimes feel that it's like it's got so chaotic, then I have to source in because this isn't gonna work. It's
like doing the exercise I talked about. It's polarity. It's like, let's go into complete chaos and then we'll go in the opposite direction. It's the same thing with world wars. Let's go and find the darkest stuff and let's completely find our values and reorientate our society after that. It's like an ebb and flow that our society at micro and macro levels and on an individual level.
So polarity is expanding right now.
Chaos is, yeah.
Which
and through that
will
come to order.
Right.
Or just more chaos after that and more order.
Yeah,
but
I get that though.
But what we're developing as individuals is more resilience, because chaos and order are awesome if you know how to ride them.
Yeah.
It's like cold water and warm water. Hot and cold's amazing. You don't just want a warm bath. So when we learn, but you need nervous system resilience to withstand the cold. And we're, as individuals and as societies, learning to become more resilient with the natural cycles. And when we're more resilient in those, we can have a lot more fun between all the polarities and explore them to their full extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Cool, man.
Yeah.
I think we've talked a lot. We've covered a lot of ground.
You said a lot of words.
We've said many words, and now it's time to stop the words.
It feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel complete. How about you?
Yeah, I feel really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel really calm. I feel really content.
You feeling content?
I feel like we did polarities.
Yeah.
We're good.
If anyone wants to get in contact with you, how do they do that? I
I
can put it in the links.
Yeah, we'll get some links on websites and Instagram and social medias and the usual things.
What do you help people with the most right now? What would somebody reach out to you for?
And like, because I offer so many things, I usually say that I help people find balance: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual.
I love that. It's super simple.
Yeah,
You help people with
straightforward.
balance.
So many tools, practices, coaching. There's so many things. Each individual is different. I don't know what they're going to need. So I have a number of things that I've trained in, and I can offer those all with the same goal: find contentment.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, hanging out with me today.
Aho.
Aho. Yes. Let me give you a hug.
My legs so numb. Oh, that was amazing. That's epic.
That was good.